If you think the only way to lower blood sugar is to cut out every carb you love, I want to stop you right there, because that idea has discouraged a lot of people who could have improved much faster with a smarter approach. The truth is, some of the most effective foods for blood sugar are not about deprivation at all. They are about changing the way your body handles glucose, changing how quickly sugar enters the bloodstream, and helping your cells respond to insulin the way they are supposed to. In other words, the goal is not just to eat less. The goal is to help your metabolism work better. And when you do that, blood sugar can start improving surprisingly fast. I'm Dr. Marie Clark, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through some of the best foods to lower blood sugar quickly and naturally, while also explaining why they work. Not hype, not fads, not random internet tips. I'm talking about foods that make sense biologically and that line up with what we understand about insulin resistance, digestion, inflammation, and glucose control. And before we jump in, if you like videos that explain what is actually happening inside your body in plain English, subscribe, give this video a like, and leave a comment with your fasting blood sugar this week. I read those comments, and they help me know what this audience is dealing with in real life. Now let's start with the part most people never get clearly explained. High blood sugar usually does not begin with sugar alone. It begins with the way your body is responding to insulin. Insulin is the hormone that helps move glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells, where it can be used for energy. When your cells respond well, blood sugar stays in a healthy range. But when your cells start ignoring insulin, glucose begins to build up in the bloodstream. That is insulin resistance. Think of it like this. Insulin is knocking on the door of the cell, but the cell is not opening properly. So the body sends more insulin, then more, and over time, both insulin and blood sugar can stay higher than they should. That is why some people feel like they are doing okay and still have stubborn numbers. It is not always about willpower. A lot of it is happening at the cellular level. The good news is that certain foods can help in 3 major ways. They can slow down how fast glucose enters the blood, they can reduce the inflammation that interferes with insulin signaling, and they can improve insulin sensitivity so your cells start responding better. That is the framework for this entire video. So let's get into the foods. The first food is eggs, and I'm starting here because this is one of the fastest, easiest changes most people can make. A lot of blood sugar problems begin at breakfast. If your day starts with cereal, juice, sweet coffee, toast, pastries, or even healthy granola that is basically dessert, wearing a wellness label, you may be setting yourself up for a roller coaster before 9 a.m. Eggs are different. They are rich in protein and naturally very low in carbohydrate. That means they have very little direct impact on blood sugar. But there is another reason they help. When you begin the day with protein instead of refined starch, you often see better glucose control at the next meal too. That means breakfast affects lunch, and lunch affects the rest of the day. 2 or 3 eggs in the morning can be a simple anchor meal. Scrambled, boiled, poached, or folded into vegetables, it does not matter nearly as much as consistency. If you want a lower spike tomorrow morning, breakfast is one of the first places to fix. The second food is avocado. People still avoid avocado because they hear fat and think danger, but avocado is one of the most blood sugar-friendly foods you can put on a plate. It is rich in fiber and monounsaturated fat, and that combination helps slow digestion. When digestion slows down, glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually. That is what you want, not a flood, a slow release. Avocado also helps with satiety, and that matters more than people think. If your meal keeps you full, you are less likely to go hunting for something sweet an hour later when energy drops and cravings hit. Half an avocado, alongside eggs, on whole grain toast, in a salad, or next to a rice-based meal, can soften the blood sugar response of that meal. You do not need to fear the calories. If the food is helping you stay stable, and eat less impulsively later. The third food is lentils, and this is where I want to make an important point. Not all carbohydrates behave the same way. Lentils are technically a carbohydrate, yes, but they come packaged with fiber, resistant starch, and plant protein. That means they digest much more slowly than white bread, white rice, crackers, chips, or sugary cereals. This is one of the biggest mistakes people make. They hear, carbs raise blood sugar, so they treat all carbs like they are identical. They are not. Lentils act very differently from ultra-processed starches. A half cup to 1 cup of cooked lentils can be a powerful swap for faster digesting carbohydrates. Add them to soup, stew, a grain bowl, or a salad. They are inexpensive, filling, and metabolically much gentler than many of the carb foods people eat every day without thinking twice. The fourth food is chia seeds. These tiny seeds do something remarkable when they come into contact with liquid. They form a gel, and that gel can help slow digestion and slow the absorption of carbohydrates from a meal. That matters because rapid absorption is exactly what produces those sharp spikes that leave people feeling tired, hungry, shaky, or foggy a little while later. Chia seeds also bring fiber and plant omega-3 fats to the table, which may support a healthier inflammatory balance in the body. Since chronic inflammation is closely tied to insulin resistance, that is not a small thing. 1 or 2 tablespoons stirred into unsweetened yogurt, oatmeal, or a smoothie is an easy way to use them. You can even let them sit in water or almond milk first, so they thicken before you eat them. The fifth food is cinnamon, but there is a small detail here that matters. Cinnamon is not magic, and it is not a replacement for the fundamentals, but it can be a helpful support food in the right context. It appears to help with blood sugar handling in part because certain plant compounds in cinnamon may support insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. The simplest way to use it is to pair it with a meal that contains carbohydrates. A little cinnamon in oatmeal, plain yogurt, coffee, or a smoothie is an easy place to start. The key is not to think of cinnamon as a miracle powder. Think of it as a small lever. Small levers matter when you use them consistently in a system that is otherwise moving in the right direction. The sixth food is apple cider vinegar. This is one of the few foods people sometimes notice on a glucose meter almost immediately. Vinegar contains acetic acid, and that appears to help slow stomach emptying and reduce the blood sugar rise after carbohydrate-rich meals in some people. That is why timing matters. If you are going to use it, using a small amount before a meal that actually contains carbohydrates makes far more sense than taking it randomly. A common way to do this is 1 tablespoon diluted in a full glass of water before a larger meal. Always dilute it. Straight vinegar is rough on the teeth and throat, and if you take blood sugar medication, especially insulin, or medicines that can cause lows, this is one of those things you should discuss with your clinician, because food plus medication can change your numbers faster than you expect. The seventh food is walnuts. Walnuts are helpful because they combine healthy fats, fiber, and a bit of protein in a way that can reduce the blood sugar impact of a snack or meal. They are also much better than the processed snack foods people often reach for when energy crashes in the afternoon. When someone swaps cookies, crackers, or chips for a handful of walnuts, they are not just removing a problem, they are replacing it with something that is far less likely to send glucose soaring. A small handful is enough. You do not need half the container. Keep them plain if you can. Sugar-coated nuts do not count as a blood sugar strategy. The eighth food is fatty fish, especially salmon, sardines, mackerel, and herring. This one is less about slowing the carbs in a meal and more about the deeper metabolic terrain underneath insulin resistance. Chronic inflammation can interfere with insulin signaling, and omega-3 fats from fatty fish may help support a healthier inflammatory response. That matters because insulin resistance is not just a sugar issue, it is a whole body communication issue. The healthier the cell membrane and the healthier the signaling environment, the better your body can respond. 2 servings a week is a realistic target for many people. If fresh fish feels too expensive, canned sardines or canned salmon are practical options and often wildly underrated. The 9th food is Greek yogurt, ideally plain and unsweetened. This is one of my favorite swaps because it can move someone from a high-sugar breakfast or snack into a much more balanced one without making them feel deprived. Plain Greek yogurt is higher in protein than regular yogurt, and that protein helps slow digestion and improve fullness. The problem is not yogurt itself. The problem is that many yogurts in stores are really desserts. They are loaded with added sugar, fruit syrup, or candy-like mix-ins, and then people wonder why their healthy snack spiked them. Plain Greek yogurt with chia seeds, a sprinkle of cinnamon, and a few berries is a very different food from a sweetened fruit on the bottom cup. And that brings me to the 10th food, berries. If you are afraid of fruit because of blood sugar, berries are often one of the gentlest places to start. They contain fiber, water, and beneficial plant compounds, and compared with many tropical fruits, juices, dried fruits, or sweet snack foods, they usually produce a smaller glucose impact. The reason I like berries is that they let people satisfy the desire for something sweet without turning that sweet craving into a glucose disaster. Strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, and blackberries can all fit well, especially when paired with protein or fat instead of eaten completely alone. Now, I want you to notice something. None of the foods I just mentioned work because they are exotic miracles. They work because they change physiology in predictable ways. They slow digestion, they lower the glycemic load of a meal, they improve fullness, they reduce the odds of rebound hunger, and some of them may help support better insulin sensitivity over time. That is what makes them useful. And now let me tell you about the mistake that stops a lot of people from seeing results. They hear a list like this, get excited, and then they keep eating exactly the same way while adding these foods on top of everything else. That does not work very well. The real power comes from substitution and stacking. Not cereal plus eggs instead of cereal. Not crackers plus walnuts instead of crackers. Not white rice plus lentils plus bread plus dessert. Lentils replacing one of the faster carbohydrates and building a more stable plate. That is where the change happens. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine someone wakes up and has sweet coffee and toast for breakfast, then grabs a muffin mid-morning, then has a sandwich, chips and soda for lunch, then gets hungry at 3 p.m. and eats whatever is nearby. By dinner, their glucose has been on a roller coaster all day, and their hunger hormones are all over the place. Now compare that with this. Eggs and avocado in the morning, Greek yogurt with chia, or a handful of walnuts later if needed, lentils or beans at lunch, a vinegar-based salad before dinner, and salmon with vegetables and a sensible carb at night. That second day is not perfect. It does not need to be. But the body experiences it very differently. Glucose comes in slower, hunger stays lower, energy gets steadier, cravings calm down, and for a lot of people, their meter starts reflecting that very quickly. I once had a patient tell me she thought her body was broken because her numbers felt impossible to control. Every time she tried to be strict, she would rebound hard. So instead of trying to white-knuckle her way through extreme restriction, we focused on meal structure, protein first, fiber first, better carbs instead of naked refined carbs, smart fats to slow the meal down, more repeatable habits, less drama. Within a couple of weeks, she was no longer seeing the giant spikes she had come to expect after lunch. Then her fasting numbers started easing down too. Not because of one superfood, because the entire day became more stable. That is how this usually works in real life. Not one magic bullet. better signals, repeated over and over. And I want to say something important here. If you are already on insulin or other glucose-lowering medication, and especially if you are prone to hypoglycemia, do not treat this like a game. Healthier eating can absolutely improve your numbers, but when medication is also in the picture, your blood sugar can fall faster than expected. That is a good reason to monitor carefully and keep your doctor informed, not a reason to avoid improving your nutrition. Now, if you want to start using these foods without overcomplicating your life, here is a very simple plan. Tomorrow morning, have eggs instead of a high-sugar breakfast. Add half an avocado somewhere in your day. Swap one fast carbohydrate for lentils or beans this week. Use plain Greek yogurt instead of sweetened yogurt or a processed snack. Add chia seeds or walnuts to one meal or snack each day. Eat fatty fish twice this week if you can. Try a little cinnamon with a carbohydrate-containing breakfast. And if it is appropriate for you, use diluted apple cider vinegar before your biggest carb-heavy meal. That is enough. You do not need to do everything at once to see movement. The biggest mistake is waiting for the perfect Monday, when you will suddenly transform your entire diet. Start with the foods that are easiest to repeat. The foods you can actually live with are the foods that change lab work, and that is the part people forget. Sustainability is metabolic power. Anyone can follow a punishing plan for 4 days. That is not the test. The test is, can you still do this in 2 months, in 6 months, in a year? Because if the answer is yes, then your body gets repeated exposure to the exact signals that lower insulin demand and stabilize blood sugar. That is where real change lives. I'm Dr. Marie Clark, and if there is one idea I want you to take away from this video, it is this: you do not have to fear food to improve your blood sugar. You need to understand which foods help your body process glucose more calmly and consistently. Add more protein. Add more fiber. Add smarter fats. Choose slower carbohydrates. Replace the foods that spike you fastest with foods that steady you longest. That is how you stop fighting your blood sugar every few hours and start working with your biology instead of against it. If you found this helpful, subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment telling me which of these foods you are going to add first. And if your morning sugars are your biggest problem, that usually points to something very specific happening overnight, and I'd cover that next.